Welcome to this episode of The Dealer Playbook, a podcast that explores what it takes to create a thriving career in the retail auto industry. I'm your host, Michael Cirillo, back for the fourth time, my pal Elise Kephart. We're talking about life experience, building up mental resilience so that you can play the game better. Just last night, I'm sitting in bed. My wife and I are watching The Crown, and my phone dings, and it's a YouTube comment. And this happens frequently. Comment on, let me just read this to you. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Comment on Elise Kephart episode. And I'm like, well, of course it's a comment on an Elise Kephart episode. It's always a comment on an Elise Kephart episode. And it cracks me up because I use your episodes of the show as a gauge to determine whether or not I have grown as a podcaster.
Yeah.
Because we did those episodes so long ago. We were trying to I think all of us were trying to figure out our style. And undoubtedly, without question, I already know. It's like, okay, I read the subject. It's like, comment on an Elise Kephart episode. And I'm like, here we go. And it's always the same thing. It's like, I wish you guys would just shut up and let Elise talk more. And it brings me right back to just, Wiseman's style of being like, yeah, but let me ask you this. And it was just, you go in 15 million directions. But we have a very clear direction. I'm excited that you're back. Now, do you know that you are my most invited back guest?
That's so special. I need like a trophy. I want to put it like back there, like it's a thing, like how Lundy has like his autographs of everybody. Like,
yeah, there you go.
That could
maybe
be like
we'll start signing this.
2020, like 2020 has been a kind of an intense year, I think, for a lot of. That would be nice. A nice little, my birthday's coming up.
When's your birthday?
I'm a cat. December 30th.
Whoa, wait. So how did that work growing up? Did you just get Christmas or did you also get a birthday?
I guess I just got used to, because my birthday's after Christmas. So you sort of just get used to like you don't always have the happy birthday wrapping paper. It's okay. Like
it's all ho, ho, ho and Merry Christmas.
But now Lily, her birthday is like, it's right before, but I make sure, and John and I are really good about that. Like I was like, no, make sure we treat it separately. Her birthday's on the 22nd, so right before.
How do you gauge what gift you give? Like, do you get the better gift on Christmas? Do you get the better gift on your birthday? How does that work?
I feel like at my age right now, I was reflecting and I'm like, oh man, I'm almost 36. I'm just glad that I got through 2021. This year was like a humdinger for sure. And we've been through we've swapped some stories, like, but yeah, so it's I'm just glad that I just getting through it. But I think for Lily, like I've always just made it, I've made sure to treat her birthday separate.
Yeah, got it. Let's talk about 2020. Humdinger. There are, because here's my take on this. At first, when my bowels quivered, when everything was happening, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? The unknown.
Right.
And everybody's trying to figure it out, and everybody was trying to navigate everything.
Everybody's an expert suddenly.
Everybody's an expert on how to overcome a pandemic all of a sudden.
There's an article.
Yeah, there's an article for everything. Yeah. But this year, I think, has been an interesting one for humankind because it leveled the playing field for everybody. How do you, like, you know what I mean? Like, you look at billionaires who have billions of dollars in leveraged assets. They were experiencing the same risks that somebody that doesn't have any material assets were facing.
Well, if I could be like super humble for a minute, like I can honestly probably look back at the last year of the core of 2019 when the bulk of my business was through going to dealerships, traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of, continued through leap year of of 2020.
Right.
And then by March, I don't remember the date, March 13th, I think it was, once, the first quarantine, I'm in California. So once the first quarantine happened, it was almost like a full, like, like from like this side of this kind of, I don't want to call it a lifestyle, but I had to shift, and I had to, as far as even you mentioned level playing field, it made it to where it's like, okay, like I'm not traveling right now.
Right.
I don't know when. Well, how do you mean you don't know when? Well, I don't know when, because it was one of those, definitely, like, I think everybody probably got a little dose of increase of anxiety because of the unknown, for even right now, there's still a lot of unknown. So it's taken, that's when I really started to dive into the mental strength and really having that control, I guess, because right now there's so much that's just out of anybody's control.
Right. And
yeah.
do you find, though, because you're what you're saying, I think everybody experienced to a degree.
Sure.
The anxiety, the how do we navigate something that we've never had to navigate? All of
a sudden, like, hey.
Yeah, like I think of my grandfather, who in 1937, my grandfather enlisted. He Italian, so he enlisted in the military. They have to do a mandatory 2-year service. A lot of those European countries, a lot of the same thing, right? So I think he was 18. It's like, okay, you're 18, you graduate high school, you go do 2 years in the service, and then you're good to go. But he didn't know in 1937 that just 2 years later we'd be in World War II and things would erupt. And so he's thinking, I'm going to get out of this. Then all of a sudden a world war breaks out, and he then has to serve on the front lines of World War II for the entire duration of that war.
Sure.
And but what I find interesting, to your point, is his father served in World War I. And his father served in conflicts like they actually lived their entire life accustomed to there being this horrific thing happening. And our generation went through 100 years essentially of plenty, like, financial crisis of 08, 09, but like we still kind of, during 08 and 09, our age group was kind of sheltered a little bit from experiencing the full gravity of 08, 09. And so we've kind of been sheltered, but we never experienced the bubonic plague. We never experienced the Spanish flu. We never experienced any of something of this magnitude, and it really did level the playing field. But you speak of what I'm hearing, like something that you're going to take through this that's actually going to make you more powerful. And not just you, those that are sharing the same mindset, that's going to make you more powerful for the rest of your life. And it's what you said, it's focusing in on that mental strength.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, amidst all of this, and for the listener who now knows, yes, Elise Kephart is, not immune to the thing, like, the social media personas versus real life.
Sure.
What have you done to invest in mental strength and resilience?
Well, it's kind of the biggest part of it, I would say, is the 75 hard challenge. Then that's by Andy Frisella. And I think I found out, I found out about that. I started it, I want to say end of July last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the time, this was before COVID and everything, but July of last year, I was coming off a long almost six month, like less than 30 days home travel route. So I started this challenge, and it was, with just some other auto people in the industry. And I kept resetting, and it was like one thing over the other. It was like, because you got to do these 5 ridiculous things, and it sounds so easy on the surface. So then eventually I just sort of was like, by Thanksgiving of last year, I was like, I'm done. Like, F this challenge.
Wait, so for those that aren't familiar with 75 hard, tell me about it. Like, what does it actually include? What is it?
It's people mistake it for like a fitness challenge, because sometimes I post a lot, and it's really just for like motivation for myself, like selfishly, but right. It's not a fitness challenge. But there's 5 things that you have to do, one of which is you every day, and you do it for 75 consecutive. So consecutive means like you cannot skip a day. Right. There's no like whoopsies. There's no like, oh, I'll take the weekend off. There's no like, I can miss a day. It's fine. It's consecutive. And if you miss a day, or you miss one thing of these 5 things, then you start to day 1 again.
Wow.
So it's kind of like burning your hand on the stove. It's like, oh, dang it. Like, it's like, how many times like are you gonna, so it's really like a lot of arguments with yourself, but I sort of looked at it like this rewire, this ability of, it's made me as in general, I think, I don't want to, just a better person, and because there's so many roles, right? Like a better mother, a better, with my business, better with my health. I think before, so much of it for me has always been, from when I left retail moving forward, focused so much on, I got to go chase the best of the best that I can get, drive the best of the best that I can get.
Right.
Flash a ton. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's I don't know. Maybe that's just the world that we live in, but it got to a point. It was after 75 hard, like I failed it, but like my birthday last year, I was renting this house that was
it was a mansion.
It was definitely, I must have went through a phase where I felt like I was like living on the movie, like the show Entourage, right? Yeah. Like where I'm just like, and we're talking, it was just way, and it was pre-furnished at the time. It was easy moving, and the landlord, like the wife, actually, she's my stylist for my lashes and my eyebrows still, so we're still really tight. But I remember just kind of laying there in bed one night, like on my birthday. It was like ultra depressing, because I didn't have my daughters with me, and I was like, it was my birthday, and I'm like in this giant house, and you would think that all these cool things, like there's a basketball court, like I kind of, and you just I felt super like this, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous of me. And like the next day I put in like I didn't even have a place lined up, but I just to put in the lease, I put in my 30-day lease cancellation, because it was month to month. I bought a 94 Accord wagon in green with the gold package. Like super, just very, I'm kind of in this thing. I'm like, why does nobody talk about this? Why, especially in the car business, does so much of what we do have to be about, I don't see a Rolex, Michael, like, bro, but we've talked about this too. Like,
yeah,
like, it's so I'm just kind of, I'm trying to step away, I guess, from like so much of, I guess, what I got, what I got.
This is like the real world stuff. Like, I wrote down this word, and it's not necessarily that I think of you in this way, but kind of this like persona that you're describing. I wrote down the word ego, because we are a very ego driven, like, I think just our human nature just to,
I don't want to mention names, but I don't know if you ever saw a video where somebody literally bought movie money and like made a big old spiel about chasing like your big dreams, because there was a duffel bag of like cash money, and it wasn't real money.
Right.
I mean, like, here's the thing about, I don't know if it's females, Michael, but like when we get an itch, like an instinct of like, that's not legit, like we'll dig like just like keep like dig and like CIA,
So
FBI.
what you're saying is I got that from having 4 sisters because I'm like,
Until we're like, yeah, I got it. I proved it. I was right.
well, let me tell you this along that line, 2020 for sure has been a year of, it's not what it seems.
Right.
There's a catch to this.
Right. So real quick, the challenge. So I started it. I quit. And then when quarantine hit, so I quit from like November to all the way up until July again of this year. And in between, I was still working out. So like when Kobe Bryant passed away for some reason, I went through this thing where I was like, I'm just going to like try and adapt my schedule to like the Kobe Bryant schedule, right? Which was like waking up super, super early.
Yep.
And spending like 6 hours working out, right? But he's like an Olympian in theory, right? And I don't know why I did that, but I think it was maybe just something to control and obsess on. So then when I decided to do the challenge again, I was like, okay, it's not just going to be about the fitness, because it's not just about the fitness. You do have to work out daily, twice, 45 minutes each. One has to be outside, which this time I didn't really struggle too much with the weather. Like last year it was a little crazy because I was still traveling. So like Arizona heat, Texas heat, then I ended up quitting anyway. But like, so, but all that for nothing. It's, yeah, the one has to be outside. And then you have to drink a gallon of water a day. And that part's tough at first. Like it takes a minute but it definitely helps, because now when I've been off the challenge, guess what? Like I'm 13 years old and I'm like breaking out again. Like now my body's like, now I'm back on energy drinks, because I'm just not, that was like one of the harder things for me too. I'm just not a water drinker, and you can't cheat. You can't like, let me put some flavoring in it, or no, it's just like, it's water. It's 2 workouts a day. It's reading 10 pages in a self-help book. So you can't read like Harry Potter or something like that. So I've read like a ton of books. That's been like one of the biggest changes. And I hate to say it, but prior to even doing this challenge last year, you know, I read like some Grant Cardone books, the Little Red Sales books. Like I think Dr. Will Jolly, like from a conference, you know, books, but not a ton, nothing consecutively. Right. And this really got me in that habit. Right. And a lot of what I've read too, like it goes along with like the 5-second rule, or like the compound effect, right? A lot on just productivity. And it's almost now I can count in my head how many times, like, I just don't want to do something so easily. Something as simple as like, I don't want to like swap out the laundry. Like but now it's just everything eventually when you get caught up on it. So it caught up on everything. That's really good. So 2 workouts a day, a gallon of water. You know, you have to stick to some type of diet. So the first round when I was like trying to be really strict on myself, and I realized that that's just not going to work. The second time around, I guess it's not really a diet, but I didn't have soda. I didn't have fast food, and I didn't have like any treats. So no ice cream, like cookies, little candies, like anything like sweet. Did I have bread? Yes, I had bread, right? Like, did I have cheese? Yes, I had cheese. Like, did I have pizza? I had pizza.
Let me ask you this though, because this sounds like the worst thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But I am like, you know, you've seen me, I'm writing notes because I feel like I understand the purpose of why you would put yourself through what sounds like civilian Navy SEAL training. But what is the actual purpose of doing all of, like, what's the purpose of subjecting yourself to something this intense?
I think for me personally, it's control and pushing myself through, because it's there's a lot with even my business where now that it's been just me, I'm responsible for a lot of avenues of it that I don't like doing. Right. I went through a tax audit this year, so that was like a nice little humdinger as well. So I've learned, it's a little slap on the wrist there, Elise. Like, you know, you learn you have to spend time almost weekly upkeeping that, right? Just like vacuuming almost. You got to put it in your schedule, because before, let me tell you, Michael, you go 3 years without without paying some taxes. It's going to be
you Wesley Snipes.
You're gonna ding off in their CRM. So, but that all cleared. Like all of that got done. Like think whatever goodness. Yeah. So, but and then you have to take a progress picture, and I'm trying to think what else. I think that's it. Yeah.
So let me recap. 75 hard. It sounds like civilian Navy SEAL training. We'll talk about what the purpose of all of this is in a minute. You do 5 things every single day consecutively. If you miss any one of those things, you restart back to day 1. Yes. So eating healthy. So focusing on your diet, focusing on inspiring yourself. So, because it says 10 pages per day. So you're forming habits. You're waking up at a reasonable hour, and you're doing 2 workouts a day. One of them has to be outside.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Oh, and then the little asterisk there, they have to be spread out half an hour apart. So you can't just say, all right, I'm going to work out an hour and a half. And
I'm going to do 2 30-minute sets right now.
Right. Yeah. No, you have to wait a half an hour. You could read right in between that half an hour, and have coffee, but you have to like take yourself off. The idea is when you question yourself of, can I get away with this? Do the harder choice. Quit, like the fact that we talk ourselves out of so much. And that's been like part of it too, the whole mental capacity and realizing like how much you actually are responsible for in your life, and those that you're responsible for, like, for me, for example, my girls, my children.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's David Goggins' book, right? He's obviously was one that I read, and he's like the Mac daddy of Mac. I've gone on a little stalking hunt. I'm trying to find, he's dating somebody, and I'm trying to figure out who that woman is.
You're gonna change your it's not gonna be Timberlake anymore. It's Elise Goggins.
I'm just curious because I'm like, imagine being like having to keep up with that. Like that's crazy. Like, but so he's. And not everybody, like my mom, I told my mom about David. I think it was Andy Frisilla, and she like listened to a little bit of his podcast, and she's like, why does he have to swear so much? And like, doesn't have to yell at you. And I just like that kind of stuff. And Grant, for a minute, like, when I was before all of this, like early on, Grant, like I always liked that about him, right? But I think when I was really studying Grant, I dedicated so much of it to less of my lifestyle and more of just my cash, more of my money, more of my work, more of like that. Yeah. And I think because I've always been, I'm like, dang, now that Time Hop just keeps adding up, and I have another, it goes back for me for a decade now, into like the retail days at the Honda store, where I have always posted, we'll call it consecutively, like almost every day. So when I go to a memories or a Time Hop, I'm able to see just a lot of my own, like, oh, wow. Like I had but you can sort of see it, I think when you avoid the things, when you avoid a lot, like it will physically reflect on you. I hate to say that, but
well, the thing about avoidance is that it doesn't actually get that thing off your plate. So it's still tying up energy units in your mind, like focus units. It's like the problem with procrastination. You keep pushing it off thinking that you're moving it out of your way, but it's actually still in the back of your mind. And if your mind has a certain capacity to it, and you're tying up that capacity on something that you should just get done, then that's creating a barrier for you to actually focus more of your energy on the things that matter more.
A big thing for me right now is I checked my average social time, and it's gone down like 98% because it's only like an hour and 11 minutes a day.
Do you
on my
find
phone.
yourself like speaking of mental health, I mean, and social media, I've read a lot of studies. There's a reason why, like a lot of people go like, dude, you got this podcast, you do all these things, you're all over the place, but you're not as active as others on social media.
Yeah.
And it's because of something you just said a few minutes ago, which is like, you got to do you, like you have to be real for yourself. And like,
the more that I step away and I take the widgets now, so I'm not even tempted to like hop, it's like a process. I got to download the app, relog back in, remember, an extra effort to do so. And I hate to do that, but I feel like I did it this morning early on, and it's just so much noise. And it's always been noisy, but right now and this year has been way more of my, and I find myself falling into the trap, but it's a lot of political noise. And I find myself falling into the trap. And I'll say that because I think not a lot of people admit that, but for that, because it's like, okay, well, what can I do here? Obviously I've let loose a minute in a little comment thread, but it's my own fault for getting involved, right? It's my own fault for even, if I'm going to use social media, then it needs, and obviously for if it's making me money, I hate to put it that way, but
right.
So I've spent right now, it's just me, and I'm balancing, a handful of dealers. And so really, as far as until I get to that, expansion again, and I decide I want to go that route, the social media right now, I mean, I do a lot of just basic documentation, but because so much of it is political, it's easier just to check it in the morning real quick, anything crazy, and then you usually see me check it at night.
Yeah, we've had social media, and I'm going to use this to transition into something else here but
treat it like it's like 2002 again, and it's like you came home and had computer time.
I just feel like we've had social media now for as many years as we have, whatever it's been, over a decade. Mm-hmm. Almost maybe 20 years that we've been actively investing our time into social media. And I just don't think, and I know there's going to be a lot of contrarian arguments to this, but again, because of social media, I believe the best way to change the world, if that's really what all of us are interested in doing, or changing our lives, I think it's important to understand the forum that can best be facilitated. And so I've never actively been in political conversations on social media because I just don't believe that that's the forum where this type of a conversation can be productive.
And I've been taught that, but it's if you have a type of personality, I think, where it's like you see something in a moment's notice, just like if you were going through like a breakup or something, and it just like it triggers you for a hot minute, right? You get thumb happy for a quick second. Totally. And
it's an echo chamber too.
Right.
Because whatever you input into that system, the algorithm's going to say, oh, they want more of this. And then you're just going to start seeing more political debates that make you mad or whatever. Right. And then you got to realize, wait, like, did I get anywhere, or am I still in the same spot? Like, I only have so much time on this planet. Did that help me move?
Energy, right. It's energy's spent and everything like that. There's a show, I forgot what it's called. Is it not the Social Network, but
Social Dilemma?
Is that what it is? The
one on Netflix. Yeah.
And so that was kind of. It is freaky because those ads, man, now I'm curious to see what kind of ads like are going to be popping up on my,
Yeah. I love the way they demonstrate. By the way, if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, definitely go check it out. It's interesting. I mean, obviously you got to watch it and understand, okay, they are pushing a narrative here. I mean, it's media, right? This is all media, but I like the way that they personified the technology. Instead of just making it a robot, they actually made it people that are going like, oh, hey, wait, we could get it was a little bit conniving, a little bit,
It reminded me of there's a Pixar movie called with anger.
Yeah. Yep. I know which one you're talking about. Can't think of the name.
I can't, yeah, where they're like in the back, like anger
The
and joy.
emotions in the brain. Yeah.
Right. It
Yeah.
reminded me of that, but in a human version, like on the social media platform. And so now every time I'm on social, it's hard not to think about that, because you're like, wow, it makes sense when they explain it that way.
Yeah. It
No,
sounds like, everything you're talking about sounds like your purpose hasn't necessarily shifted, but you've gained more clarity on how you want to fulfill your purpose.
sure. Yeah.
Right. Like, because I've gone through all these phases. I mean, you and I have had long conversations over the phone where we all experience progression and growth, and we're all, we're influenced in different ways and this and that. But I mean, I think everybody kind of goes through this period of their life where, well, I hope they do, at least, where they ultimately get more clarity as a result of experience on how they want to actually live their life and fulfill their purpose in life. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are going like, how do I actually identify what my purpose is? Right.
Yeah.
And I know, and I'm sensitive to the fact that people are struggling with that. But it sounds like everything you're doing, why do you do 70? Why are you doing something crazy intense like 75 hard? Why are you downsizing or shifting what you invest your money in? Why are you doing the things you're doing today? And ultimately, I think it's just because you and the listener, if they're struggling right now, like, you need to get to a point where you have clarity, where you take the time to get clarity on how you want to actually live your life, and like, what is it that you're actually fighting for. I think inside all of us, there's a piece of all of us that want to be the rock star, that want to own the private jet, that want to have the mansions, that want to have the whatever.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately not having clarity on your purpose, that if you got there, you probably wouldn't feel satisfied.
I mean, if I guess if I, maybe part of it was if I got there, like, I would want to. Grant Cardone explains it very well. He does that. He has all those toys off of a portion of his residual income, his residual income every month, not his normal income, we'll call it.
Right.
So in that case, it makes sense. In my case, where I'm, not not at that level, but living like I'm, on the show Entourage, just it makes no sense, right? But again, you get caught up. I think that's, from the moment. It
goes back to the ego piece a little bit.
I mean, right? From the first sales meeting, I remember they're throwing coins and money, at a sales meeting when I first started selling cars in like 2007. So, and that was another kind of crazy thing too, being so active on the road and doing that when quarantine first hit. It had been a couple of months before I drove out to Texas to go to a dealership once things started to open up again, and Texas was one of the first states. But I remember driving out to Texas, and it's 24 hours, in case you wondered, like in a car, on one highway. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't taken a call. Like I haven't taken a call in like 3 months. That's like out of my routine. And I've always looked at, I think what has, even just from we'll call it a work, or from like the Elise Timberlake alias, what's always allowed me to improve on that is constantly doing it.
Yeah.
Even some of the videos from when we were roommates, like 4 years ago or what have you, I watched some of those. I'm like, wow, that's not how I explain things now.
Yeah.
I don't even go down that route. That's not my bread and butter. And so I think what you were saying, where my purpose, if I'm going to put my purpose as my daughters get older, and especially now just with a major lifestyle, change for me, from going from married to not, to where I don't want to call it like it's a poor me single mom, but 50% of the month I have my daughters, full time. I've always had a nanny too, and that was something that during, I think a lot of people probably went through something like this where the school shut down and you have children who go to school typically and the school shut down.
Yeah.
My youngest, got diagnosed with autism last year. And so I've been making that, I don't want to call it a skill set, but I decided to make that added to my life. I've sort of realized that to get everything done, like to the role of like a mother and running a business and like the workouts, because I want J-Lo like and everything else. Luckily, I don't I'm like not married, so I don't have to argue or spend any of my time doing that, and I can just do all that. But it requires waking up earlier quite a bit, and I don't go to bed too late, but it requires a pretty concise schedule. But I've been working on that, fine-tuning it over the last year, and I know that thanks to Time Hop. So it's kind of been interesting to see
it sounds like what you're, like what if I'm picking up what you're putting down, do the kids still say that? In order to develop the mental resilience, right? We've talked about quite a few things. Okay. The DPB gang is listening and they're picking up on these things. They're going, man, how do I get through tough times? How do I rise victorious? And what we're hearing is, in order to, you need to be mentally tough. And in order to do that, in order to be resilient, you need to challenge yourself with purpose. You need to, what I just wrote down is, you need to take ownership of your circumstances without excuses. Sure. Like I'm seeing a pattern, like you're demonstrating a pattern that I've seen in my life I mean, gosh, like there's speaking of Grant Cardone, there's a video of Grant Cardone that he put out a couple of weeks ago, maybe at the time of recording this, couple of weeks ago. He's in the exercise center in his, apartment facility or whatever, wherever he lives, his condo. And the video was all about how to move forward when you just don't want to, when you wake up feeling depressed, when you wake up. And I really appreciated it because in that video, he's like, guys, let's get real. I didn't want to work out today. I felt off. Like people think I'm 10X all the time, hustle. No, I have my off days. Everybody has.
It's a lot of arguments. Yeah.
Off days. Yeah. A lot of arguments. I remember when I sat in his hotel room and I was interviewing him for one of the episodes that he was on. He was like, straight up, dude, like I didn't want to do this interview.
Yeah.
And I'm like, straight up, dude, I didn't want to do this interview.
Right.
And in that moment he took the opportunity to teach, but we still did it. And therein lies the differentiator.
It's the pushing through, the whole David Goggins concept is that when you think that like, oh, I'm done, you're actually only like 40% of what you can actually push through. I'm not a runner by any means. Like I'm still awful at it. There's no way, like there's some crazy runners in the automotive industry, but I guess it's that I compare it to that feeling like if you are jogging and you're if everything's fine at first, you have your headphones on, everything's cool, and then you start to feel it. You got to start to control your breath a little bit better. Your legs start to hurt a little bit. You're like, why am I doing this in your head? Like, why don't I just stop and start walking?
Yeah.
And then you see like a tree or like a car and you're like, no, I'm going to get to that car. Like no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And you don't think you can do it. And before you know it, you've passed the car to like the next one and the next one. So it's just proof that your mind can trick you into thinking that you're all gassed out, that you're done. And it's not necessarily like a work thing. Obviously it's great when you figure out how to channel that energy for work or any other part of your life. But like I said, for me, I'm just realizing it like, my whole laundry routine has changed, Michael. I used to have like 17 loads of laundry on Sunday and I never understood why. And it would be like a whole mountain of laundry, like for the girl. And now I realize if you do a load every single day, you never have laundry day again. like just like a one rotate, and it's like, well, there's more water, but it's kind of this, I guess it's that's I don't know.
Is it more water? You're still doing the same amount of laundry. You're just not doing it all at once and burdening
Those math
yourself.
questions, I don't know, but I've definitely realized through this that I'm not a and I don't know why I'm talking. I've definitely realized that I'm not a homeschooling's tough. Teachers should get paid more for sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's it's tough, but yeah, I mean, it's the purpose for me has always been, once I became a mom, or when people become parents, I think it changes a lot, a big shift. But when I sort of went through this personal shift again from just being married to not married, and really, I mean, the last almost 2 years now have been more time for me, myself, and like with my daughters, obviously, when I have them,
Mm-hmm.
than I've ever had, like, me time ever in my life.
Yeah.
Like, other than like being a teenager and stuff like that. But if you're gonna call it like where you have, when you're in a relationship or married, I'm realizing it somewhat, that's a huge commitment, right? To somebody else. And I think maybe for me, and maybe I don't know if other people go through this, but it's allowed me as an individual to really figure out me as an individual, versus, I mean, the last decade of my life has been, it's kind of a crazy thing. Like, it's been a lot of the last decade, we'll call it, has been this transition of meeting Jim Ziegler, who's going to be on with you, and that whole thing kind of, I don't want to call it exploding, but once I met Jim Ziegler and went to Vegas for that first internet battle plan, that really introduced me to a whole different side of the automotive industry outside of just my one little single rooftop store.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's, the mental capacity, it's just, you figure out, it helps me. It's selfishly, it helps me with the phone calls now. Right. Cause like, when I'm working with a BDC is a tough role where, like, you don't want to pick up the phone. Probability that customer is not going to pick up. Like, that's a rejection on it. Like, it gets like right. But I have to go into, taking myself off the road. I do these Zooms now, usually in an hour or like a 2-hour basis, where it could be like, and I'm switching companies or switching dealerships, but it could be a long stretch. I call it like a nice little bell shift of like very little bathroom breaks, and having to put my Elise Timberlake hat on for 6 or 7 almost straight hours. So by the afternoon time, man, and especially if like the last session before that, and they always can tell too, because I'm like, oh, the last one I just took an amazing call. Like, I'm normally like super, super fired up. I mean, I always take good calls. That's a super fun thing too, because it's, I think when I branched out on my own as we'll call it an internet or BDC or phone training company, so much of what I taught at the time, and I'll say it, was because of what was taught to me, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a minute for you to really figure out your own style, right? Your own individuality. Right. And so much of it's happened just for me over the last, 5 years. I just had my 5-year anniversary of doing this. And, and so it's fun now, because a lot of people that do training with me, the training companies out there, typically they'll still teach, but you don't really see it done live.
Sure.
And I have down the probability to where in a training session, or even last year when there was a thing called conferences, and I would have the probability down to where it's a risky move, but I can get a customer on the phone within 5 minutes. So to be able to guarantee that, right, and then be able to hear what happens, and it's everything that it's almost like playing chess or something, right? Before I make the call, I have it down now to where I can just, I don't know, almost like just completely dissect it and say, here's, if the customer picks up, here's what's going to happen. Here's what I'm going to prep for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also, it's super cool to see like it unfold exactly that way. And even now, because people aren't picking up their phones and so much of what I teach now is texting, which what do you got to train about texting? That's easy to do. Well, yes, the concept of using your thumbs or your fingers is easy, but most people just get ghosted on text, right?
Yeah. It's easy to ghost people.
They go ask for an appointment and then that's it, because it's easy. But what I've really developed is, and it might be just because so much of my bread and butter has been on the phone. Is there a way, and I call it my alley-oop method, because that's like my Michael Jordan, love Michael Jordan, like alley-oop method of taking a text, screenshot after screenshot after screenshot, to where like what I'm writing, you would think is like just normal. Yeah. But it's part of a 1, 2, 3. Right.
Yeah.
To be able to get not the appointment, but I want the phone call. And that's where a lot of people just don't realize that over text, once you ask for an appointment over text, it's not to say that you can't, but if it doesn't go your way, your probability of being able to reverse that text to a phone call or close it without getting ghosted and it not just being a pen pal, or it's work to do this, but a lot of people don't know how to convert it consecutively. So that's been a big thing too, knowing how to convert it. And then the video stuff, that's kind of a crazy thing too. Like I was telling a class the other day, they're like, wow, you're so good at the video emails, right? Like, and I'll show them a video from 2013 from the good old Honda days. And then one from now, and they go, wow, you're not even scripted now. And I'm like, oh no, let me tell you, I am scripted, because here's 27 other videos from yesterday that I did.
Yeah.
Similar to this one.
Yeah.
And so in doing it, like for those types of videos, I've done so many now, thousands. I don't have to look, but
you put in the work, Elise.
By like 4:45 on like a Friday.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do another video.
Yeah. You know what, though? This is why, and I just want to say this, just in winding down. This is what I love about this conversation.
People wouldn't guess that. They're like, oh, you must love it. No, at this point, like there's some.
Yeah, and this is it. This is kind of the crux of this whole podcast. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable, being real. Like, I really appreciate that. And I think a lot more people need to understand that everybody is going through something. And the best thing that we can do for ourselves is build up that mental resilience to find out, our purpose, move forward with clarity, so that, so I love that with your students here on the podcast, wherever it is, you're breaking down those barriers of this, we feel like we need to be invincible. I could undoubtedly, you know me, I could talk about this all day. This is right up my alley. I love this stuff, and I think it's so important to have this message. I think what you've done, maybe without even knowing it, is you've just opened yourself up to the DPB gang to start, having support sessions with other people who are going through the same thing. And I actually hope that does happen. I think more people need to be talking about just real day-to-day life and how to navigate growing career, but also growing life. So let me ask you this one final question. How can the DPB gang get in touch with you and connect?
That would just be my email, my 2020. By the way, we're almost done with 2020 at this point on the time recording. But that was like a resolution. I'm like, I'm going to keep my inbox pretty filtered. So it's my first name, Elise, and then it's elisekephart.com. I'm sure you're going to put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's going to be in the show notes. Elise Kephart, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast. I'm Michael Cirillo, and you've been listening to the Dealer Playbook Podcast. If you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. Leave a rating or review and share it with a colleague. If you're ready to make big changes in your life and career and want to connect with positive, nurturing automotive professionals, join my exclusive DPB Pro community on Facebook. That's where we share information, ideas, and content that isn't shared anywhere else. I can't wait to meet you there. Thanks for listening.